So, um, what if the most profound emotional damage you can inflict on someone doesn't require yelling or, hitting or even a single harsh word,
Yeah, that's the thing.
right? What if the most abusive thing you can do to another human being is, is absolutely nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack this honestly deeply challenging and frankly eye-opening text titled When Avoidance Becomes the Most Abusive Thing Ever.
It's a really powerful piece.
It is. And we're using this research today as a shortcut for you, the listener, to understand a hidden dynamic that is almost certainly impacting your relationships, your well-being, and like even your physical nervous system right now.
Yeah, and to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at the exact opposite of action.
Right.
We're exploring how what people don't do specifically, the deliberate strategic withholding of their presence, how that creates a very specific type of psychological and physical toll.
It really does.
And I just want to invite you to hold multiple perspectives as we explore this together today, because it's a space full of really uncomfortable nuances.
It really is. Largely because, society usually praises people who, keep the peace.
Exactly. We applaud them.
Right. We culturally applaud the person who avoids conflict. We tell them they're being the bigger person. But today, we are flipping that script entirely to look at the dark side of non-action.
And that's what psychologists sometimes call the passive wound.
The passive wound, yeah.
Yeah.
It's harm that doesn't announce itself. There's no big dramatic exit. It's just this slow, agonizing accumulation of nothingness.
And that nothingness is actually an incredibly aggressive act of erasure. I mean, think about it. We have this massive, highly descriptive vocabulary for the things people do to each other.
Sure. Insults, betrayals, physical harm.
Exactly. We understand all that. But we are almost completely lacking the language to describe what people deliberately withhold.
Oh, that's such a good point.
It's the eyes that intentionally slide away when you're speaking. It's, the urgent conversation that's allowed to just abruptly die mid-sentence.
The worst.
It's the door that doesn't quite close but never fully opens.
And because there is no common language for that,
Yeah.
the person doing the withholding the avoider can just throw their hands up and claim total innocence.
All right. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything.
Exactly. And technically, strictly speaking, they are right. They didn't commit a visible action.
But the impact is huge.
It makes me think of a computer trying to load a corrupted web page.
Oh, I like that.
Like your brain is the computer and it's endlessly spinning that little loading wheel, burning up all its processing power, trying to resolve an open loop that the other person just refuses to close.
Yes.
You completely exhaust yourself trying to process a non-event. It's like trying to convince someone you're freezing in a room without a thermometer. You feel it, but you can't prove it.
And that continuous processing drain is precisely why it feels so crazy-making. Because you're trying to force a resolution in a vacuum. And culturally, we tend to mistake that vacuum for neutrality.
We do. We look at someone avoiding a tense situation and think, oh, they're just being diplomatic.
They aren't taking a side. But avoidance is never neutral.
Wait, really? Never?
Never. True neutrality would mean sitting exactly equidistant from your own comfort and the other person's discomfort. Avoidance strongly, and I mean predictably, favors one side.
It favors the avoider. It completely favors the avoider's emotional ease over the other person's need for reality or truth or just basic contact.
Exactly. It's a highly calculated decision to prioritize personal comfort over another human being's reality.
Wow.
And when that happens, the refusal to engage destroys the possibility of what we call a shared reality.
A shared reality.
Right. If one person refuses to acknowledge the distress of the other, those two people are no longer inhabiting the same relational world.
Because you can't argue with silence.
No, you can't. You cannot resolve an issue that the other person flatly refuses to acknowledge even exists.
Which creates this intense secondary wound, like the gaslighting effect.
Absolutely.
Because you're sitting there burning out your mental CPU on that spinning loading wheel. And the other person looks completely unbothered. They're perfectly calm.
They're fine.
Right. So naturally, because you have nothing tangible to point to, you start turning on yourself. You wonder, am I being dramatic? Is this even happening? Should I just, I don't know, lower my expectations?
And that secondary wound is often vastly more destabilizing than the initial withdrawal.
More destabilizing.
Oh, for sure. Because you're not just losing a connection with the other person in that moment, you are fundamentally losing trust in your own perception of reality.
So while your brain is busy gaslighting you, trying to figure out if you're just making things up, Your nervous system is actually telling a completely different, undeniable story.
Yes. From a somatic perspective, meaning, how our physical biology reacts to our environment, the body absolutely does not experience avoidance as nothing. It registers a highly specific pattern signal. And over time, that signal triggers a nervous system response that is remarkably similar to encountering an overt physical threat.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, because this is where my own skepticism kicks in.
Go for it.
And I'm sure some listeners are feeling it too. If my partner or a close friend just goes quiet because they need a minute to cool off, my body isn't treating that like a punch in the face.
Right.
So where's the line between someone taking a healthy, normal breather and this primal survival response you're talking about? How does a lack of action trigger an alarm bell?
That is the crucial distinction to make. A healthy breather is communicated, comes with a promise of return. Someone says, I am overwhelmed, I need 20 minutes to walk around the block, but we will finish this conversation.
Got it. So they're closing the loop eventually.
Exactly. Avoidance, as a chronic pattern, offers no return. It offers a void. And to understand why the body reacts so violently to that void, we have to look at the mechanics of human biology and evolution.
Okay, let's look at it.
Humans are profoundly social mammals. Our brains are hardwired to constantly scan the faces, voices, and body language of our tribe for cues of safety.
Right. So if I'm looking at you, my brain is subconsciously checking. Are we good? Am I safe here?
Continually. It's happening beneath your conscious awareness every single second.
Oh, wow.
And when someone you depend on consistently drops their end of that connection when they offer a blank wall instead of social mirroring at the exact moment you're in distress, your amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, fires off.
Because it thinks we're in danger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, in evolutionary terms, a lack of social mirroring didn't just mean someone was annoyed with you. It meant isolation. It meant you were being pushed out of the tribe.
And for early humans, being separated from the tribe equaled death.
Literally, yes.
So the body isn't overreacting at all. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do millions of years ago. It's perceiving the danger of abandonment, the danger of not mattering to the group.
And psychologists look at this through the lens of attachment theory. The clinical research on emotional neglect backs this up in really startling ways.
How so?
Well, unpredictable or persistent emotional unavailability produces psychological and physical outcomes that are completely comparable to visible forms of abuse.
That is intense.
Because the human nervous system doesn't grade harm on a scale of the literal actions the perpetrator took, it registers the gap.
Wait, the gap between what?
The gap between what was biologically needed for safety, so a reassuring word, a touch, a simple acknowledgement of your presence, and the void that was actually received.
Ah, I see.
When a person repeatedly reaches across that gap and finds nothing there, the brain starts to adapt to protect itself. It learns a tragic new survival rule: don't ask, don't need, don't reach.
Don't have, don't need, don't reach.
Man,
That is incredibly heavy.
it really is.
And eventually, the person being avoided just stops asking. Not because their needs magically evaporated, but because the cost of asking that anticipatory dread, the sheer physiological deflation of reaching into a void and getting nothing back, it just becomes far too expensive for their nervous system to handle.
Exactly. They shut down to survive.
And it's so easy for people to look at that shutdown and call it peace. Oh, we don't argue anymore, things are fine. But that isn't peace. That is defeat.
It is defeat masquerading as peace. And if you're listening right now and recognizing that kind of peace in your own life where you've just stopped bringing things up because the pain of the blank wall is too great, it is vital to understand the difference.
Yeah, if you were in that situation, it's time to actually decode what that silence is saying to you.
Yeah.
Because if your body is treating it like a blaring alarm system, there is a very clear message being broadcast.
There absolutely is.
Let's strip away all the polite excuses and plausible deniability. What is the silence actually saying?
When you strip away the excuses, avoidance communicates incredibly harsh truths. It essentially tells the other person, your feelings are a problem I simply do not want to have.
Ouch.
It says, my comfort is vastly more important than your clarity. And perhaps the most damaging underlying message. If you need something from me, you are asking for too much.
And the part that really scrambles your reality, the part that drives that mental loading screen into overdrive, is how the avoider usually behaves while they're broadcasting these harsh messages.
Oh, this is the kicker.
Right. They typically present themselves in this very serene, reasonable light. They are calm. They just need a little space. They aren't raising their voice or slamming doors, and by default, that aesthetic of calmness frames the person who is simply begging for connection
Right.
as demanding, excessive, and completely unstable.
Which is honestly a masterclass in power dynamics.
It really is.
This framing is entirely about control. It's just wearing a quieter costume. By refusing to engage, the avoider dictates the entire reality of the relationship. They hold all the cards.
Because you can't force them to talk.
Right. They position themselves as the patient one, enduring the emotional chaos of the other person. But we have to separate patience from care.
That's a great distinction.
And stillness, as we just saw with the nervous system's response, is completely different from safety.
Absolutely. You know, there's a concept I came across in our research that hit me so hard. It's called the purgatory of interpretation.
Oh, yes. That is such a visceral phrase.
I guarantee you listening have felt this.
Yeah.
If you have ever spent 3 days rereading a one-word text message, trying to figure out what you did wrong,
We've all been there.
right, or replaying a conversation in the shower to see if you used the wrong tone of voice, or drafting 20 different versions of an email so you don't trigger them pulling away,
Yeah.
you have lived in this purgatory.
Yes, you have.
It is unbelievably exhausting to constantly be a detective of someone else's silence.
It is exhausting, and it's profoundly neurologically taxing because of how the human brain functions.
Oh, so?
At our core, we are pattern detection machines. Our brains are designed to find meaning and predictability.
Okay.
When you're hit with silence once or twice, your brain tries to interpret it as an anomaly. Like, was it a mistake? Did they just not hear me?
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right. But over time, that silence stops feeling like a temporary absence. It takes on a real physical weight. The brain detects the overarching pattern. This person disappears precisely when I need them most.
Man. So it stops being a void and starts becoming a tangible wall.
Yes. And eventually, the silence evolves into a fluent language of its own. You stop trying to interpret it as a misunderstanding, and your brain realizes it was always saying no.
Just quietly enough that you could never formally prove it.
Exactly. You can't prove it, but your brain knows it.
I genuinely think that kind of invisible rejection is more shattering than someone just looking you in the eye and saying, I don't care about you.
It often is.
Because at least with a direct rejection, you have a solid wall to push back against. You can get angry at it, you can grieve it, you could eventually move on, but that invisible wall, it traps you.
It leaves you frozen.
And this trap brings us to where this dynamic is most profoundly destructive, which is intimate relationships, friendships, marriages, close family ties.
Intimacy is the crucible for this behavior. When you enter into a close relationship, there is a foundational, albeit unspoken, contract.
It's a contract.
You're agreeing to be a witness for each other. You're saying, I will see you and I will stay present, especially during your vulnerable or difficult moments.
Wow. And avoidance just rips that contract up.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate bait and switch.
It really is.
Imagine you invite someone into your house. You unlock all the doors, you show them all your most fragile prized possessions, you give them the blueprint to your insecurities because you trust them. And then the second a pipe bursts in the basement and water is rushing in, you look over and they're just gone. They use the access you gave them to know exactly when to disappear.
Psychologists have a specific clinical term for that exact scenario: emotional abandonment.
Emotional abandonment.
Yeah. The avoider uses their intimate knowledge of your interior life not to offer support, but to perfectly calibrate their own exit. They know exactly which rooms to avoid when the water starts rising.
That is chilling.
And calling this a form of harm or even abuse isn't an exaggeration. In trauma literature, it is clinically accurate.
Now, I want to pivot here because I know there's a listener right now thinking, wait, what about the avoider? Aren't they just completely overwhelmed? Maybe they're hurting too.
That's a very fair question.
And I think it's absolutely vital we look at the origin story of this behavior. Why do they vanish when the pipe bursts? Because nobody is born wanting to emotionally abandon the people they love.
No, they aren't. And it's essential to look at the origin because to truly understand avoidance, we have to hold two seemingly contradictory truths at the exact same time.
Okay, what's the first truth?
The first truth is that avoidance almost entirely stems from deep-seated fear. The person doing the avoiding usually learned very early in their cognitive development that emotional engagement was fundamentally dangerous.
Oh, wow.
Perhaps expressing their needs as a child led to swift punishment? Or perhaps the caregivers around them were so volatile that shutting down, turning off the lights, and hiding internally was the only effective survival strategy they had.
So they built that invisible wall to protect themselves long before they ever met you?
Yeah.
It wasn't born out of malice.
Yeah.
It was a shield.
Yes. It is a deeply ingrained self-protective mechanism. However, and this is the second truth, we must hold simultaneously understanding the origin of the fear does not magically nullify its current impact.
Right.
Having profound empathy for the early trauma that created the avoider's pattern does not excuse the very real, very present damage that pattern is inflicting on you today.
That is so important. Compassion isn't a free pass for collateral damage. You can hold space for their past without letting them destroy your present.
You must, because what happens in these relationships is a massive structural asymmetry.
Structural asymmetry, like an imbalance.
Exactly. The avoider's need for non-engagement, their need to stay perfectly comfortable and undisturbed, is constantly treated as the paramount need of the relationship.
While the other person's is just left hanging.
Meanwhile, the other person's completely valid, biologically driven need for connection is treated as an unreasonable imposition.
So basically, the avoider's slight discomfort always outranks your sheer panic.
To put it bluntly, yes. And real change, systemic relational change, can only happen when that asymmetry is entirely dismantled.
So what does that look like?
The avoider must learn to tolerate the exact discomfort they have organized their entire life to escape. They have to do the incredibly hard, often terrifying work of staying in the basement when the pipe bursts.
Which probably takes a massive amount of courage and realistically, often professional support.
Almost always.
But if they refuse to do that work, you just end up back in that endless loop we talked about at the start, where society praises their peacefulness, and you are left shivering in a room without a thermometer, convinced you're just too demanding.
It is the appearance of peace, maintained entirely at another person's expense. And recognizing that difference is one of the most vital forms of discernment we can develop in our adult lives.
So as we pull all these threads together, what is the real reckoning here?
I think it's about naming it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The core takeaway for you, listen to this deep dive, is recognizing that harm caused quietly, without the drama, the raised voices, or the visible bruises, is still structurally and functionally harm.
Yes.
The wound is completely real, and your nervous system has the receipts to prove it. Naming that wound, refusing to let it be erased by someone else's silence, isn't you being difficult or dramatic. It is the necessary, non-negotiable first step in reclaiming your own reality.
And I would ask you as a listener to take a really unflinching look at your own relational landscape, and it requires looking in both directions.
What should they be asking themselves?
Ask yourself honestly, is someone's persistent avoidance signaling to my nervous system that I don't matter? And because we all have blind spots, ask the inverse. Am I avoiding someone? What truth am I refusing to engage with, and what deep harm is my desire for comfort causing them?
Man, those are tough, mirror-holding questions.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that change lives.
They really are.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you step back into your day. We discussed how your brain is an incredibly powerful pattern detection machine, and how, over time, silence evolves into a fluent language. Think about the invisible reality you are co-creating every day. If silence really is a language and your brain is constantly learning the dialect, what specific patterns of silence are you currently teaching the people in your life to accept as normal? And perhaps the most revealing question of all, who originally taught you to accept theirs?